My own mother told me she couldn't afford to come to my wedding. I believed her, until the morning of my big day, when I saw her tagged in a Facebook photo, cocktail in hand, smiling on a Caribbean cruise.
That was the moment something inside me broke.
But what she didn't know was that karma had already written the perfect revenge. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you the most, this story is going to hit deep. Smash that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this isn't just a story about a ruined wedding. It's about exposing lies, unmasking greed, and watching karma take everything from the people who thought they'd outsmarted me. My name is Naomi, and like most brides-to-be, I spent years dreaming of my wedding day. Not the fancy stuff, not the flowers or the cake or whether the napkins matched the tablecloths.
No.
For me, the dream was simple: walking down the aisle, looking out, and seeing my family in the front row. My mom wiping away tears, my siblings cheering me on, my dad giving me that nod that said, "You're going to be okay."
That vision carried me through all the stress of planning. But reality?
It hit me like a sucker punch. It was 3 months before my wedding when I sat across from my mom at her small kitchen table. The table I'd eaten thousands of family meals on, the one covered in coffee rings and tiny knife scratches from years of use. She was holding a chipped mug of instant coffee, steam curling in the air, while I clutched my binder of wedding plans like a lifeline.
I was nervous but excited.
I had just finished telling her about the venue, about the dress I'd picked, and about how badly I wanted her there.
That's when her face shifted. Her eyes dropped to the mug.
And her voice, usually sharp, commanding, the kind of voice that filled a room, came out small.
"Sweetheart, I just can't afford it.
The flights, the hotel, the dress, it's too much.
I'm so sorry."
At first, I thought I misheard.
I laughed a little, waiting for the punchline. But she didn't laugh back. She pressed a napkin to her eyes and sighed.
"You know I love you, Naomi. If I could be there, I would.
But times are hard.
I barely have enough for groceries some weeks. I just can't do it."
Her voice cracked.
Her shoulders trembled. And like the dutiful daughter I was, I believed her. I reached across the table, squeezed her hand, and told her it was okay. That I understood.
That love wasn't measured in money. But inside,
it felt like something inside me collapsed. Because the truth is, when you're a bride, you don't just want a pretty dress or nice flowers.
You want your people.
The ones who raised you. The ones who promised they'd always be there. In that moment, though, I told myself not to be selfish.
That maybe I was being dramatic.
That life was hard for her, and I should just be grateful she even cared enough to want to be there.
So I smiled. I swallowed the ache in my throat. But deep down,
a seed of hurt had already been planted. And on the day of my wedding, that seed would split open and grow into something I could never take back. The morning of my wedding was supposed to feel magical. The kind of day you wake up and everything glows. Instead, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. The hotel suite was filled with the soft hum of hair dryers, the smell of hairspray, and the buzz of bridesmaids fussing with makeup. My dress hung on the door like a cloud, ivory lace and satin, the kind of gown you imagine as a little girl and somehow, against all odds, end up wearing as a woman. But while everyone else was laughing and taking selfies, I couldn't stop staring at the front row of chairs in my mind.
Empty. My mother's chair.
She'd told me she couldn't afford to come, and I'd accepted it. I'd even told the planner to leave her seat unassigned, so no one else would take it.
Still, a part of me prayed she'd surprise me.
That maybe she'd show up at the last second, rushing in, out of breath, saying, "How could I ever miss this?" But as the morning ticked by, my phone stayed silent.
No good luck text.
No last-minute confession.
Nothing.
I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced a smile, and let my maid of honor zip me into my dress. When the ceremony started, I tried to focus on my fiancé's face, the way his eyes softened when he saw me. I tried to drown myself in the sound of the music, the scent of roses, the warmth of the candles. But when I stepped into the aisle and looked toward the front row, that empty chair screamed louder than the organ music. Every step felt heavier. Every smile felt thinner. I made it through the vows, but my chest was tight the whole time, like someone had strapped a weight across my ribs. And then, during the reception, as we sat down for the first toast, my maid of honor gasped. Not a normal gasp, a sharp, shocked inhale that made the whole table glance her way.
She had her phone in her hand, her eyes wide. "Naomi, you need to see this."
I leaned over, my heart thudding in my ears.
She turned the screen toward me. And there it was. A Facebook post. Freshly uploaded. My mother.
On the deck of a Caribbean cruise ship. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, holding a neon-colored cocktail with one of those little paper umbrellas sticking out. Her smile was huge. Carefree. And the caption? Family Cruise 2021. Much needed vacation.
The timestamp?
The same day.
The same hour I was walking down the aisle.
I stared at the screen, my vision blurring.
My throat closed up. It wasn't just that she wasn't at my wedding. It was that she'd lied.
Lied so easily, so convincingly, with fake tears at that kitchen table. Lied about being broke, while sipping margaritas on a cruise ship deck. I forced a smile for the rest of the reception. But inside, I was shattered. Every laugh felt hollow. Every toast felt like mockery. The night ended with me smiling for photos I could barely look at later, all while knowing the truth. On the most important day of my life, my family chose a vacation over me. The wedding was supposed to be the beginning of something new.
A fresh chapter. But instead, it became a scar.
For weeks afterward, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head, my mother's laugh frozen in that photo, the cocktail in her hand, the hashtag splashed across Facebook. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the cruise had been a last-minute deal. Maybe someone else had paid for it. Maybe, God help me, maybe she had cried at that kitchen table because she really had been torn, and she had chosen the cheaper option for her mental health.
I clung to those excuses like lifelines.
Because the alternative, that she had lied, intentionally and coldly, was too heavy to face. But excuses don't hold up when the evidence keeps rolling in. Every day, more pictures surfaced. My sister posing with dolphins, my brother grinning at a fancy dinner, my mom holding up a glass of champagne under string lights. Excursion after excursion. Thousands of dollars worth of fun, documented in full color for the world to see. And not once, did any of them call. Not a congrats on the wedding. Not a sorry we couldn't make it. Not even a cheap card in the mail.
Nothing. It wasn't silence by accident. It was silence by design. The worst part.
My new husband tried to comfort me, but even he couldn't understand the depth of it. Maybe they just didn't realize how important it was to you, he said gently one night as we lay in bed. I rolled onto my side, staring into the dark. No, I whispered. They knew, and they didn't care. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? They hadn't just missed a wedding.
They had abandoned me.
And slowly, as the honeymoon glow faded, I felt it seep into my bones, the understanding that my family wasn't busy or struggling.
They were selfish.
And I was disposable.
That realization, it changed me. I stopped calling. Stopped texting.
My phone sat silent on the nightstand, and every day it didn't light up, I felt a mix of grief and grim validation. They didn't miss me. And if they didn't miss me, why should I chase them? The cracks had shown. And beneath them, the foundation of my family was crumbling. It had been almost a year since the wedding when life handed me the kind of twist you only see in movies. My grandmother, my mom's mom, had passed away when I was in college. She'd been a quiet woman, gentle and steady, the kind of grandmother who always smelled like lavender soap and kept butterscotch candies in her purse.
She never had much, or so I thought.
A modest little house, old furniture, and a car that coughed every time you turned the ignition.
So when my uncle asked me to help clean out her storage unit, I didn't expect much.
Just dust, mothballs, and boxes of yellowed photo albums. We were sorting through stacks of holiday decorations when I noticed a small fireproof lockbox tucked in the corner. My uncle grumbled, saying he thought it was full of old bills, and handed me the key. When I cracked it open, I didn't find bills. I found documents. Thick, official-looking papers with embossed seals and heavy staples. My breath caught as I scanned the words, Revocable Living Trust. Beneficiary, Naomi, last name. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. I wasn't rich. My family wasn't rich. How could this be real? But the further I read, the more my hands began to tremble. My grandmother had set up a trust. $1 million trust. And it was mine. Entirely mine. Not split with my siblings. Not divided among cousins. Mine. There was just one condition. I wouldn't gain access until my 35th birthday. I sat there in the dust-filled storage unit, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My uncle glanced at me, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside.
$1 million.
And then, like puzzle pieces snapping into place, the past year began to make sense. My family hadn't skipped my wedding because of money. They hadn't cried broke and stayed home out of necessity.
No. They had known. Or at least suspected.
Because suddenly, their behavior made perfect sense. The fake tears. The excuses.
The silence after the wedding. The cruise.
Why waste their money on me now, when they thought they'd have access to something far bigger later?
It wasn't about missing the wedding. It was about calculating.
About treating me not as a daughter or a sister, but as an investment.
That realization left me cold.
I thought back to every childhood promise my mom had made. I'll always be there for you.
Family is everything.
Blood is thicker than water.
Lies. All of it.
Because in the end, blood wasn't thicker than money. And that day, sitting in the middle of cardboard boxes and broken ornaments, I made a quiet vow to myself.
They thought they could discard me and still cash in later. They thought I was weak. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. After finding out about the trust, I didn't explode. I didn't storm into my mom's house waving the papers, screaming, "How could you?" That's what they would have expected. That's how they thought I operated. Emotional, impulsive, easy to manipulate. No. I wasn't giving them that satisfaction. Instead, I went silent. At first, it was hard. I wanted answers. I wanted to demand. Did you know? Is that why you left me at the altar of my own family? But silence has power. So I became a ghost in their lives. When my mom texted, I gave one-word replies. Fine. Busy. Okay. When my sister tagged me in some half-hearted family photo, I ignored it. When birthdays rolled around, I sent no cards, no calls, no gifts. And slowly, the gap between us widened, not with drama, but with absence. It hurt, at first. But then something unexpected happened. I started to feel free. Free from the constant guilt of being the peacemaker. Free from trying to prove I was worthy of their attention. Free from begging for scraps of love. And in that freedom, I started planning. I didn't need to rush. The trust wouldn't unlock until my 35th birthday. That gave me years to let the silence do its work. Years to let them forget me until all they remembered was the dollar signs attached to my name. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. I threw myself into my marriage, my career, my own friendships. My husband and I saved money, traveled when we could, and built a life that didn't revolve around my family's approval. Every year, on my wedding anniversary, we went somewhere special, not to escape the pain, but to reclaim the date. I'd post photos, Paris one year, the Grand Canyon the next, a small vineyard tucked away in Italy. Each picture was a quiet declaration, you didn't break me. I'm still living. And though I rarely checked, I knew they saw those posts. I could feel their eyes on me from afar, watching, waiting. Then, as my 35th birthday drew closer, the silence broke. It started as little feelers. My sister sent me a casual DM. Hey, long time no see. We should catch up soon to Heartstut. My brother commented on an old photo. Looks like you're doing great, sis. And then, finally, my mom called. Her voice was syrupy sweet, like she'd been rehearsing. Naomi, honey, we've been so worried about you. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. We should plan something for your birthday, don't you think? I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, my lips curling into a smile she couldn't see. Oh, I thought. So now I matter again. Now that the money's about to be within reach. They thought I'd forgotten. They thought I'd forgiven. They had no idea I'd been waiting for this moment. So I kept my voice calm, even cheerful. You're right, Mom. Let's do something special. I'll host a dinner. The trap was set. As my 35th birthday drew closer, I could feel it, the shift in the air. For years, they had barely noticed me. Now suddenly, I was the center of attention again. The text started innocently enough. My sister. Hey Naomi, how have you been? We should do a spa day like old times to Heartstut. Old times? We'd never had spa days. Then my brother. Big 3 to 5 coming up, huh? We should throw you a party. You only turned 35 once. I almost laughed. The same brother who couldn't even be bothered to send a wedding card now wanted to plan my birthday party? And then, my mother. Her voice on the phone was soft, dripping with honey. Naomi, darling, we've all made mistakes. But you're my baby. Family sticks together. Why don't we celebrate your birthday properly?
We'd love to come. I held the phone to my ear, staring out my kitchen window, watching rain trickle down the glass.
My lips curled into a smile she couldn't see. So there it was. The mask finally slipped. They weren't calling because they missed me. They weren't calling because they suddenly grew a conscience.
They were calling because they knew.
They had sniffed out the inheritance like bloodhounds. It wasn't about love. It was about access. And the irony? They thought I was too naive to see through it. So I gave them exactly what they wanted.
You're right, Mom.
Let's do a dinner. Just family. Somewhere nice. The excitement in her voice was instant.
Oh, sweetheart, that sounds wonderful. You won't regret this. But I already knew, it wouldn't be me who regretted it. The weeks leading up to the dinner were surreal. Suddenly, my siblings were all over my social media. Liking posts they used to ignore, leaving comments like, "So proud of you, sis."
My mother even mailed me a card. A card. Something she hadn't bothered with in years.
Inside, in looping handwriting, it said, "No matter what, you'll always be my little girl."
I laughed out loud when I read it.
Because if I was her little girl, why had she left me alone on the most important day of my life?
No, this wasn't love. This was hunger. Greed wrapped in cheap sentiment.
And I was about to starve them of the feast they thought was coming. The night of the dinner arrived. I'd rented out a private dining room in a beautiful restaurant. Soft candlelight flickered off crystal glasses. A long table was set with white linens and gleaming silverware.
It was intimate. Elegant. The kind of setting that whispered importance. They arrived dressed to impress.
My sister in a designer dress I knew she couldn't afford, my brother in a pressed suit, my mother dripping with jewelry that suddenly didn't look as expensive as it once had. They hugged me like prodigal relatives returning home, all perfume and false warmth. "Oh, Naomi, you look amazing."
"This is so nice, sis."
"We've missed you so much." Their smiles were wide, but their eyes?
Calculating. They thought this was the night they were being let back in. And I let them believe it. We laughed. We toasted.
We ate. For the first time in years, it almost looked like a family dinner.
Almost.
But as the main course ended and the plates were cleared, my heart began to pound with anticipation.
Because dessert wasn't just dessert. It was the reveal. And I was ready.
The waiters cleared the plates, and in came dessert, delicate chocolate soufflés dusted with powdered sugar.
Each one was placed in front of us like a crown jewel. But I had one more dessert to serve.
I reached into my bag and pulled out a neat stack of cream-colored envelopes, each embossed with gold trim. The kind of envelope that whispers importance.
I slid one in front of my mother, one in front of my sister, one in front of my brother. Their eyes lit up like children on Christmas morning.
My sister gasped, clutching hers. "Naomi, what is this?"
I leaned back in my chair, swirling the last of my wine. "Go ahead. Open it."
They tore into the envelopes eagerly, anticipation practically dripping from their faces. For a moment, the only sound in the room was paper ripping and silverware clinking faintly in the background.
And then, silence.
Their smiles froze.
My brother's jaw tightened.
My sister blinked rapidly as if she'd misread. My mother's lips parted, then pressed together so tightly her face went pale. Because inside wasn't money. It wasn't an invitation to share in some newfound wealth. It was a letter.
From my lawyer.
Stating, in the cold language of legality, that my inheritance was irrevocably mine alone.
Every cent. Every asset.
Locked so tightly that not a single one of them could touch it. And to ensure there would be no confusion, the letter also detailed my will, signed, notarized, ironclad, leaving not one penny to my mother, my sister, or my brother.
Instead,
my estate was earmarked for charities, scholarships for children of single mothers, and organizations that had supported me when my own family would not. I watched their faces collapse in unison, like a wave of disbelief crashing over them. My sister's voice cracked first.
"Naomi, this can't be right. You don't mean this."
My brother slammed his fist on the table. "This is a joke, right? After everything we've been through."
I laughed then. Actually laughed.
A sound sharp and bitter, years in the making.
"After everything we've been through? You mean after you abandoned me on my wedding day? After you pretended I didn't exist for a decade?
After you only called me when you smelled money in the air?" I leaned forward, my voice low but steady.
"This isn't a joke. This is justice. You taught me exactly where I stand in this family.
Tonight, I'm returning the favor. My mother's eyes glistened, but not with remorse, with fury. Naomi, you're being cruel.
We're family.
Blood is thicker than water.
I met her stare, unflinching. Funny.
You didn't think blood mattered when you left me standing alone in a white dress, humiliated. You didn't think blood mattered when you chose silence over love for 10 years. Blood might be thicker than water, Mom, but it's not thicker than betrayal.
Her lips trembled, but she had no reply.
I stood, placing my napkin gently on the table.
My hands weren't shaking anymore.
For the first time in years, I felt whole.
Enjoy your soufflé.
It's the last sweet thing you'll ever get from me.
And with that, I walked out.
Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. I inhaled deeply, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Behind me, muffled through the restaurant's walls, I could hear the chaos. Raised voices.
Anger.
Desperation.
But it no longer mattered.
Because for the first time, I hadn't just been excluded from their table, I had flipped it entirely. The inheritance they craved was mine.
The future they thought they'd secured had slipped through their fingers. And all the power they once held over me was gone.
They had cut me out of their lives once.
Tonight, I cut them out for good.
I walked away from that restaurant lighter than I'd ever felt. Not because I'd won some petty game, not because I'd beaten them, but because I'd finally broken free. 4 years, I had carried their betrayal like an anchor tied to my chest. I let it define me, weigh me down, whisper in my ear that I was unworthy of love.
But that night, I cut the rope. People ask me if I regret it.
If I regret cutting off my mother, my sister, my brother, the people society tells you you're supposed to forgive endlessly.
And here's my answer. No.
Not even for a second. Because family isn't blood. Family is love, loyalty, respect. And when those are absent, all you have left are people who share your last name, nothing more.
I chose peace over chaos.
I chose freedom over manipulation.
I chose myself.
And let me tell you something, that is the sweetest inheritance of all. So, if you've ever been cut out, betrayed, or left behind by the very people who were supposed to protect you, remember this: you don't need their seat at the table.
You can build your own. And when you do,
you'll realize what I finally learned that night.
Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction.
Sometimes, the best revenge is living well without them. And that was Naomi's story. What do you think? Was she too harsh on her family, or did they get exactly what they deserved? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, sometimes, the sweetest revenge is moving on without the people who tried to break you.